Friends, were you here last week or did you listen to the sermon from last week? It was incredible. Did you hear it? Anyone? Bueller? A few people? So if you did not, you need to go back and listen. Terry Kylo was here and he talked to us about fear and how fear causes us into other, like to create us and them attitude. He spoke of love in a time of fear and chaos in our country. He shared about institutional dehumanization. I mean, come on. So he explored how the Jesus story is this bold yes and to our neighbors, especially our Muslim and Jewish brothers and sisters who face discrimination. And if you haven't watched or listened yet, again, please catch it and go check out that sermon on our Facebook page, or it's podcasted. You can get it all via the Salt House app as well. Terry will actually be back at the end of August as well, bringing a few of his Muslim friends with him for just a conversation, and it's going to be awesome. So catching up by listening to last week will just really prepare you for that time too. So I commend it to you. Enjoy. All right, then today, our experience of yes and is one that we're going to explore with one of our Salt House core practices. So in the 3 short years of our existence as a church, we've organically discovered 7 core practices, things that we do together that mark the kind of life, again, that we practice here together in community, but also we try to hold them as ways that we try to exist in the world outside of this place too. And one of these defining practices for us is that of hearing God. We believe that is a practice for us. We want to hear God. And even as I say that, I know there are people in this room, in our community, who don't know what that means. What does it mean to hear God? Well, there's much to what that means. But we hold hearing God as a core practice at Salt House because we believe that God is here. And not only is God here, like in the building on a Sunday morning, but God is present in the world. God is present in the fibers of the universe, present in us, present moving through us. And as many have said, we don't just experience God in creation. God is creation, right? God is in all the things. And God is not the only thing in the world, which is why we see suffering and destruction and pain and injustice. But there is also God in all things, bubbling up life and wholeness and healing and reconciliation. And we want to tune into that, right? That frequency. If we can tune the dial to that, we want to be in that. We want to step into the flow of that river that is existing in this world, into the sounds and the flow of what God is doing, which means sometimes then we're going to pick up on, we're going to notice things, we're going to hear things, we're going to hear God. Does that make sense for you? Yeah. So I wonder, just to stop and ask, when have you heard God? How have you heard God? In what form, in what way? As simple as just like walking on a trail at sunset and you're just feeling connected to the earth and to all good things, or having the right words to say at that moment when a friend needs to hear something, or when that's happened for you, or that gut instinct on an important decision in your life. What are the moments of hearing God that you have known? So we try to then, here at Salt House, to listen to, tune into that frequency, to say yes and to hearing God, to that which is deepest within us. So if we're going to hear this song then, I like to think of it as a song that's been playing in the cosmos since time began. If we're going to do that, pay attention to our world and orient ourselves towards the light and love of God that's all around us. I feel like spending some time actively doing that as a community together on a Sunday morning is a pretty good way to spend our time. I don't think historically the church is known for that. Like, are we actually listening for God in this time that we share? But we sure want to try to do that together. So that's why we try to do that in certain ways. And one of the ways that we tune into this frequency is through Lectio Divina. It's a practice that we come back to every 6 to 8 weeks or so here on Sundays. So Lectio Divina, it's Latin for divine reading or holy word. And it's a practice that's been used by Jesus followers since the 3rd century. So it's been around for a while. And why we use it now is because it lets the Bible remain as something as it was intended to be, a living, breathing collection of writings that sings that song of the holy, that gives us a few snippets and sound bites of that song of God and of all creation. It doesn't make the Bible into something then that has one clear thing to say for each little bit that we read, but instead lets it stand in mystery and possibility, and with endless, bottomless layers of meaning and winks and insights for us to pick up on. Not only then written for long ago for them then, but written for us now. So we hold it as both. So for those new to Lectio, it's really simple and accessible. Lectio involves repeating a section of the Bible, of Scripture, listening. You just listen to it for a word or a phrase that gets your attention, then prayerfully holding that word or phrase, looking for connections to your life now and what God might be saying in that connection. And I know that Lectio is not everyone's jam. Like, this might not be your thing, and that's okay. Thank you for hanging in with us while we do this together, if it's not. So today we're going to turn to a text where God is speaking. Seems like a good thing to do if we're talking about hearing God, right? And in this particular case, it's Moses. It's Moses who's the one who is listening. It's one of the quintessential moments of God speaking in the Bible. Moses, who has fled from Egypt, where the Hebrew people, his people, are enslaved under Pharaoh, and in his quiet life of exile and retreat as a shepherd, Moses is shaken awake by God speaking to him through what? A bush, a burning bush, in fact, yes. So yes, this is Exodus 3, 4 through 12. The NIV version is what we're going to use if for those watching or who might be listening another time. So Exodus 3 is where we're landing. So we're going to practice this core practice together now. I'm going to walk you through it if you haven't done it before. I invite you to prepare for that. Just get comfortable in your seat. The first time reading, especially, you don't need anything in your hands. So I invite you, again, to connect with your breath, roll those shoulders. If you were here in May as we began this sermon series of Yes and, we talked about the posture of Yes and being one of open hands. So I invite you to kind of into that posture, if that feels comfortable for now. Just open those hands on your lap if you'd like to. Open hands, we hold ourselves with open bodies, open ears, hearts as we listen. So the first step of Lectio is reading. We read the text, staying in that place connected to your breath, attentive. This first time reading is just to hear the text. There's no agenda, just letting the words fall on our ears. So I invite you to listen with your eyes closed if that's comfortable for you. I'm going to set up the reading just this first time through. I'm going to read the 3 verses leading up to our reading, just to give us the context. So we're in Exodus 3. This time we'll begin in verse 1. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. So here our reading begins. When the Lord saw that Moses had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers. I'm concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. So now we will read it again, and this time we begin to listen more deeply. So this next time through, we listen for a word or phrase that touches our heart, that gets our attention. It's a larger a larger text, so there's a lot to hold, but we're just listening for one word or phrase. If you're a more visual person, this is printed on the bulletin insert on the back, so if you want to see it, that's there for you to see. Otherwise, you can keep your eyes closed. And sometimes we're drawn to one or more than one phrase. That's okay, just pick one. There's no wrong answer as we go through this. So listen for something that shimmers for you, or you feel curious or confused or stirred by. And when that word or phrase is found, gently recite it to yourself, repeat it, and reflect on it during the short silence that will follow this reading. When the Lord saw that Moses had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am." "Do not come any closer," God said. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Then he said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." But Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And God said, "I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." If you're willing, I invite you to share out loud just the word or phrase that has come up for you, just to kind of speak that out so we can hear it. Here I am. Land of milk and honey. What's that? I will be with you. A few nods to that one. Who am I? Thank you for sharing. So the second step in Lectio is reflection, to reflect. So we each hold the word or phrase and we ask where the word or phrase touches our life today. As we do this, don't be afraid of distractions or busy brain memories or thoughts that bubble up as we do this. They're part of ourselves, and as they rise up during Lectio, we give them to God along with everything else. So embrace those things as they come up, listen to them, don't fight them, but say yes and to them, those things that come up. So really we're asking the question, God, what are you saying to me? Is what we hold then as we listen. So continue to repeat your word while holding it in dialogue with God. If you're still listening for a word or phrase, that's fine too. Just keep listening till you land on something. But we begin to ask the why question. Why is this grabbing our attention today as we hear the text again? This time hearing it in a different voice. I'm going to have Greg come up and read it for us just to hear it differently.
When the Lord saw that Moses had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am." "Do not come any closer," God said. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." Then he said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." At this, Moses hid his face, because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I've seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now, go. I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain.
Friends, now is the moment where we make space to share what we're starting to hear. And we've tried this a few different ways in the past. And today we're going to break into groups of 2 or 3 at the most. And just to take 1 minute each to name the word or phrase that's coming up for us and why you think it's coming up for you. What's interesting, curious, or disruptive about it. Really just aiming to take 1 minute each. And do know that you can just say, it was this phrase, and I don't really know why it came up. Like, you don't have to, you can gauge as fully as you want to, and you don't have to be very vulnerable if you don't want to be. And again, I encourage you to connect with folks that you didn't arrive here with, because you can always talk with the person, the friend or family member on the way home about what you heard. So kind of step out of your comfort zone a little bit and find someone, which can mean standing up and moving if you need to. But I advise to move just smoothly, decisively into groups of 2 or 3 and find those folks, okay? Ready, go. I wasn't actually watching the time, but okay. Okay. Man, thank you for that courageous work of speaking things out loud to another person. So thank you for that and sharing your experience of what God is saying. Just one quick word from me on this is simply to say, I so deeply and always have deeply resonated with Moses in this text. And I maybe even talked about it here before, but his protest and his questions, my response to God when it came to becoming a pastor, then later considering this call here to be a pastor of this new church in Kirkland, and at so many kind of threshold moments in my life, with my shoes off and standing on holy ground, my response to God has always been who am I? Who am I? Who am I to do that? What can I bring to that? How's that going to work? That kind of response that has been me. I am on Team Moses, all the way, right? But what I heard in this text in a new way this week was God's response to Moses, right? It's always been there, but that's what I love about Scripture. We hear it differently when we come back to it, and that's why we come back to it. But I hear it in the context of our Yes and series, this collaboration series that we're in. I hear God saying, Moses, Sara, everyone, I will be with you. I am always collaborating with you. And for all the ways that we're afraid or hesitant, we were talking about how Moses hid his face, right? What a embodied way of being afraid, right? And all the ways when we're afraid or just baffled into our own who am I moments, those chances to say yes and when God is speaking to us, this is the response from God every time. I will be with you. Look for the signs. I am with you. In response to all the ways that we say, well, who am I? Look for the signs. I am with you. And my response, our response, we can say yes because we're not alone in it. It is a yes to collaborate with God, and what a gift to hear that. So as we finish our time in Lectio together, the 4th and final step of Lectio is to remain, to simply dwell, to rest as the beloved of God in the presence of God, and just to quote my seminary professor, sometimes we just need to know that we're sitting fat and sassy in God's grace. It is the fat and sassy moment of just being the beloved. and we hold what we've heard spoken through the Bible, spoken from each other, as a word of grace and hope for us. For God most certainly speaks through us as a gift with and for each other. So as we remain and finish this holy time together, let's just continue to hold sacred space for each other. The band's going to come up, lead us in a song, but I invite us to assume the position, hands up and open if you would like, or just that spirit of being open as we pray together too. So God, it is summer, and in summertime, it's a rich time away in the mountains and camping and at Disneyland and family cabins and sand between our toes kinds of moments, river rides, and so many places where we can tune into your frequency to rest and play and read and grill and be on vacation, to connect with family and friends in the wilderness where we remember who we are. We have moments of conversation with these beloveds that we spend time with. We're in the soil of nature. We're turning pages in books that speak to us, and we're reminded that all of these places and through all of these mediums and more, we can hear you speaking to us. The burning bush is all around us. Continue to help us hear you in the cacophony of good things that you speak through, including the Bible, the story of God for them then and for us now. So thank you that you are our God, who is and will be with us always.